All right, Figgy Ed here with my most exciting video to date. And yes, I did say that about my last two videos, but in my defense, they were very exciting. One of them was about soil, and I've been refining that recipe for 10 years. The last 5 years focusing on figs, and I consider soil super important part of the overall recipe here. So yes, that is very exciting to me. And the other video was I was giving away a baby fig tree that I put a ton of effort and care into over many, many months, and I was giving that away. So yes, those were the two most exciting to date. But now for real, the most exciting video. Somebody left me a comment saying, hey, Figgy Ed, you grow figs indoors. Do you have a video that tells you everything step by step to consider to grow figs indoors? And I'm like, how do I not have a video like that? So thank you very much for that. You get a free fig. We're already talking. We'll go through a walk through my garden and we'll see which fig variety you want of mine, and I will do an air layer for you. So thank you very much for the really great idea. And I am going to now get into detail. I identified 8 major categories to consider when growing figs indoors. And if you want them to be sweet, I am not a master. I'm not trying to pretend like I'm an expert here. I'm not. I'm doing a lot of experimentation and I'm learning a ton. And that's what my videos are mostly about. I'm sharing with you what I'm doing and the results that I'm seeing. Sometimes you can limit the variables a lot and truly say that this thing that I did led to this result, but you can't always do that. And I'm pretty clear in my videos when I am able to isolate variables and not. So what you're gonna notice is it looks very expensive to do everything that I'm doing. And yes, all of this is very expensive, but I had to first prove that you can grow sweet figs indoors successfully. So check, that is the very expensive version of it. Since then, I've been experimenting with ways to reduce costs by a lot and still get sweet figs. So less expensive on the lights, less expensive on the soil, less expensive on the fertilizer. All of that is stuff that I'm working through right now. And I have been able to grow some very sweet figs, close to 30 on the brix scale, with just 150 watts of light for 12 hours a day. That's 25 cents a day for lights, roughly. We'll walk you through all of the things that I've learned growing these figs indoors. I've been doing it for just over a year now, and I've come up with 8 major categories or areas of consideration that you should look at when you want to do something like this. And those 8 major categories are light, heat, soil, fertilizer, insects, you need to do insect control, water, air quality, and chill days. Those are all the major categories that I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into. So if you are interested in growing some very nice indoor fig trees and producing some very sweet figs from them, come on, follow along with me. Let's get into some detail. Okay, so when I first started doing this, people told me that the biggest challenges I'd run into would be replicating light and heat that the figs get in their natural environment. And absolutely, I put a lot into that. And you'll see my setup. I have several different types of lights that hang from the ceiling. I have Spider Farmer, I have Bestva, and I have Faceta. And then I also have lights that go around the perimeter, and they're on stands, and those are mostly Sansi lights. What you'll see in my description, I put a ton of detail to measure the PPFD, the photosynthetic photon flux density, and that essentially measures the amount of usable light that actually reaches the plant's surface. It measures it in micromoles per square meter per second. And I have a tool, a really cool little instrument that gives me some good measurements over there. What I do in the description is I compare the sun, well, it's not a comparison, but I show the PPFD from the sun during midday, during the evening, and during a cloudy day. And then I show the the lights that I have hanging from the ceiling. So my Spider Farmer, my Bestva, and my Faceta, and I go 1 foot below to 2 feet below, all the way down to 5 feet below, and I do adjacent 1 foot also, just so you can get an understanding of the PPFD readings and some cool information over there. You can hang the lights from a pole, you can hang them from a rack, you can do direct hang from the ceiling. That's what I do. I find a beam up in the ceiling and I hang it, connect it directly to that beam. And then you can also set up an enclosed space, and that's what I think most people do when they're growing things indoors, but I did not. You can also use the lights on the stands, and I absolutely love those lights on the stand. I even pretend that I turn off the lights on the ceiling earlier and I leave the lights on the stands to pretend it's like sunset time. One last consideration in the light area is the carbon dioxide. If you're going above 1,000 ppfd, this is all from reading, not experience. If you want to introduce some carbon dioxide, some extra carbon dioxide into the air, because those extra chemicals, and I don't understand the science thoroughly here, but at a high level, what I understand is the extra carbon dioxide will help create the chemicals inside of the plant that will allow it to use going above 1,000 or 1,200 ppfd. So if you're going to have intense lights like that, you might want to consider introducing some carbon dioxide. Next up is heat. I get over here in this area during the winter, it was up around 75 to 80 degrees all the time because the vent is right there. And those vents are constantly cranking out heat in the winter. Now that it's closer to spring and summer and the heat is not on anymore, it's about 72 over there. That's the coolest it gets. And they're very happy. But the higher heat made a difference. I think they were happier, but they're still very happy right now in 72 degrees. So I think you want to target at least 70, 72 degrees. You could use heating pads. They make a huge difference. I had heating pads underneath and wrapped around my pots in some cases. You can use heaters, those little space heaters. Those are very good. That'll help you control the temperature pretty well, especially if it's an enclosed area. And then the HVAC, like I have an HVAC system, and it just so happened that I was right near the vent, and that worked out really well for me. You need to figure out what works best for you in your space, and I would love to help anybody. Just leave some comments. Let me know what you're working with over there, and I can help share my opinion on what'll set you up for success best. Next up is soil, and I absolutely love soil. I think it's one of the most important components, in my opinion. I did a video that I'll link to in the description where I get into much more detail about the soil, but essentially the takeaway for growing indoors is, for me, I want to go heavier on the aeration side. So all of my soil, I use 4/5 potting soil, various different types of potting soil, and you could use any potting soil. I like my stuff charged up a little bit, and you could get that pretty easily anywhere. That's 4/5 potting soil, and then 1/5 compost. That's the mix that I use, and then on top of that, I add aeration. And the aeration is made up of perlite, pumice, and rice hulls. So for indoors, I'll add 40% on top of that total. So that'll make it so that out of the 100%, out of the total, out of the new total, that'll make the aeration 30% of that. So it's a lot. And the trees up here, I think, absolutely love it. I have some trees in here that went a little bit heavier on the compost side, and they don't need as much water. They're just not as happy. I don't think they're as happy outside either when I go too heavy on the soil. I think that 4/5 potting soil to 1/5 compost is a really good start. And then the amount of aeration, I would do 25% on top of that for outside, and about up to 35 to 40% on top of that for indoor trees. And then after that, I add the extra love, all the good extra minerals and nutrients. I use green sand, azomite, biochar, earthworms, gypsum, and BioLive. That stuff just gives it the extra love. While I'm doing that, I'm always considering immediate, short, medium, and long-term benefits that you're going to get for the things that you add. And for established trees, when I'm doing this, I'm going to be up potting established trees. I also add some fertilizer, some solid fertilizer. I do love Fox Farm. You can see all of this in my other video, but I use a balanced blend, and then I also add a blend that's high, or any blend that's high in P and K to help out with fruiting. Any strong soil will do. Just put a lot of thought into your soil. I like it to be very alive, and I like to consider, again, immediate, short, medium, and long term. So for the pot size, you just need to consider your space and your needs and plan accordingly. I personally like the fabric pots a lot. They allow for some air pruning. They're very inexpensive. I'm gonna actually start using these air pruning pots. They look super cool, and they're going to be more effective at doing the air pruning. These trees indoors, they really grow quickly, and these roots are gonna get root bound. So you do need to consider root pruning. When I do the root pruning, I'll do air layering with it. So it just helps me spread the love. I give out the air layers to friends and family. The moisture is the last part that you wanna consider in the soil. Like I mentioned, if you use that mix above, you should have a good consistency of soil that will allow for the right moisture. And then you have to stay on top of it. I have some trees that like to drink a gallon a day. What I use to measure my moisture is I have these wireless soil meters that are pretty good. I seem to be trusting them more and more as time goes on. And another test, I use the regular soil meters also, and then the good old-fashioned stick your finger in there, but most of my trees wind up getting so root bound that it's hard to get a finger in there. I touch the sides of the fabric pot also. That gives you a good sense of what's going on in there. All right, next up, fertilizer. And again, I have a bunch of videos. I have a playlist for fertilizers, and I'll link off to one of the videos down below. But I think they're all worth watching. I'm experimenting a lot with fertilizer. I notice definitely differences in growth when I'm doing it, but also I have measured results, differences in brix. When I measure with and without using my sweetener feeds, I stopped on 2 different trees feeding them for a month, and I noticed the brix readings dropped a lot. When I introduced them back into the equation, the brix readings went up by about almost 10 in some cases within a couple of weeks. So I will be doing experiments on fertilizer. Much more to come on that. I love Fox Farm right now, absolutely obsessed with them, but I'm going to start using hydroponics, that brand, because apparently they're really good and been around for a while. So I want to test and experiment a little bit there. And I'll also do an experiment with more widely used fertilizers such as Osmocote and see how that works out. Again, trying to limit the amount of cost here. Next category, insects. This is the most annoying thing for me about growing figs indoors. Not that I've had a bad problem, but I don't want to have a bad problem. And I have a thing with insects. So I'm staying really on top of this. You need to get a magnifying glass. I would highly suggest you do that. Or you could get a problem that grows out of hand quickly. I have a microscope that is digital. You could get those for about $50, but it's not necessary. So far, I've run into the spider mites, real annoying. And I've had that twice. And I've also had, I believe, we narrowed it down to thrips larvae, but they did not make it to adulthood. Oh yeah. And when you're purchasing trees or cuttings from somebody else, make sure to spray them. The one thing also that you should know about if you're growing anything indoors, I'm sure you've dealt with gnats, the fungus gnats. This is, for me, is just a constant. I'm always fighting fungus gnats, and I'm winning because I don't see them flying around anymore. When you see the adults flying around, that means the larvae have had enough time to mature and turn into adults and start flying around. That's not what causes problems for your trees. It's the larvae of the fungus gnat. So you really need to target that. I use nematodes. They're amazing for a whole bunch of stuff. And then I also use Gnatrol, Gnatrol. And I get that from New York City Figs, NYC Figs on figbid.com. that stuff is really good. Between those two, I've got the larva under control a lot. And to the point, like I said, I don't see any more of the adults flying around. But I leave everything up and I continue to maintain this because they will come back. For the adults, when they do eventually come around, I use several different things. I have the regular bug zappers. Those are all over my house. Those kill a whole bunch of whatever flying insects. And I also use those little fans with the lights, the little blue purple light that attracts the flying insects, and then a fan sucks it down into a sticky down at the bottom. Those are very effective for me also. And the good old yellow stickies. I think those are absolutely great. I use those a lot. All right, the next category is water. And I do not like to hold back on water, especially if it's hot and if you're using an aerated soil. In heavier soils, you don't need as much water, but again, my figs don't like the heavier soils. They don't like sitting in that wetness. So I like the aerated soil and give it a lot of water. So again, like I said before, some of my trees, they'll drink a gallon a day, depending on what's going on. Some of the factors that go into how much water is, what is the tree doing? Is it growing a lot? Does it have a lot of leaves? Is it putting out figs? A lot of moisture evaporates from the leaves. So these are some of the things you'll want to consider. But then again, get some kind of moisture reader. That'll help you a lot manage all of this. Next up, category number 7, air quality. You do not want too much humidity in there. If you do have that, you might want to consider getting a dehumidifier and a fan. Those will help a lot with that. I have a lot of air purifiers. I absolutely love them. They help a ton with the air quality. And lastly, category number 8. Did I leave the most exciting one for last? I'm not sure. Chill days. Are they necessary? There's a lot of people that will tell you they're necessary, and they probably are. I'm one of those people that needs to prove it out. So I'm testing this right now myself. I have an Angelito tree, an indoor Angelito tree, and we know fig trees all like to take breaks. So this tree started it started off, I up-potted it in March of 2024 into a 10-gallon indoors in my house, and it took 3 breaks, and it put out 3 sets of growth through October 2024 when it got spider mites and it stopped growing at that point. It had a ton of figs left on it. It went semi-dormant while it was ripening all of those figs. And then the leaves, they started falling off naturally, and I gave them a little bit of help. I pulled off some of the leaves. Then all of a sudden in March, it started growing again. And it was looking a little bit stressed, the growth. It definitely wasn't growing the same way it was the first time. So I up-potted it up to a 46-gallon pot. And now it is absolutely taking off. The growth does not look stressed anymore. It has figs, baby little figlets on every node like it did the first time. And now the next step in this test is to see the quality of those figs. This tree would have been a full season, over a year, indoors. And in the next 3 months or so, I'll be able to test the quality of those figs. At that point, it would have been inside for 18 months without any chill days. So I'm very curious to see what the results of that testing is. And I have a few other trees that I'm doing this with as well. It just so happens that the Angelito tree is the fig that started it all. Figgy Ed exists because of that Angelito tree, and I absolutely love it. And I can't wait to see what comes of it all. All right, let me know what you think. If you have any questions or you want to go over something in your specific setup, I can help out in any way. Please don't hold back. Comment. That's how I love to collaborate, through comments, and help people out. And I've learned a ton by just listening to the comments and the feedback that people have for me. So please don't hold back. Let me know what you think. All right, more to come.